Hey, you've made it to Spry Space, where people managing social media accounts come for community. This year, our focus is social media for good. Together, we can work to make social media a landscape for healthy online communities to grow. Sound good? Then come along with us on the Spry Space podcast, where we share what we know, learn what we don't, and strive to make social media better for us all. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Spry Space podcast. I'm Lacey, and today I've got Adrienne and Amber here with me. Hi, ladies. Good to see you.
Hello.
Hi.
All right, so I'm going to start us off with our nice icebreaker question about, is there a piece of social media content that you've ingested this week that has brought you joy? So I have a little one. I moved recently, and my friend who lives where I used to live, she lives next to this pond, and at nighttime, the frogs have started making a lot of noise, and so she does nightly Instagram stories of the sounds of the frogs, and it makes me feel so good. I miss being out in her backyard, and I'm just happy to hear the frog noises even from far away.
It feels, frog noises feel like hope, right? Spring is coming.
Yes.
And it's like a promise. And hope is something we don't have a lot of lately. So I think that I would love that too. I might need to follow her just for frog noises.
All right, I'll send you her profile. Amber, did you have one too?
I do, but it's not frog noises. And most people may find this odd. But the other day, and I screenshot it and sent it to my team here at Spry, I had an ad in my newsfeed, which was an image of a man on a toilet with he's in boxers, but they're like pulled up. Like he doesn't have his pants down, but he's sitting on a toilet. And it just says 4.5 out of 5-star rating at the top. That's it. And I was like, what is this? So I send it to him, and I'm kind of teasing, to the Spry crew. I'm kind of teasing about how ineffective this advertisement was. Well, here's where it gets funny, is that since then, and it's been a few days, I have gotten ads from Omigo, or it might be Omigo. We're not really sure. It is a bidet, and
yes,
I am full of content in my newsfeed, in my marketplace, and my email. I have no idea. These people are geniuses. Because of course I clicked on it trying to figure out what an Omigo was. I had no idea because it didn't say. So at first I was thinking that these guys were not very smart, and now I think that they were real smart because I did the extra step to click through. Might have been a stroke of genius, but now it just makes me laugh every time I see another one of their ads, and I'm like, tricks on me. Okay.
That's amazing.
If you get a bidet, I'm just going to come over. Okay.
Well, one of their ads that they sent is, remember when we ran out of toilet paper?
Oh, I love it.
Here's your solution.
Dang. All right, enough potty talk. Today we're talking about manners. Okay.
Oh, the irony.
So this is a topic that we've been interested in for a very long time because a lot of people's social media manners suck. And so it just happens that this month our whole content theme is social media as a means of human connection. And one of the ways that we can safeguard human connection over social media is by having really good manners on social media. So we're going to break down what good social media manners look like. And we're going to start from a really basic perspective. Adrienne, you brought the idea to the table, like, could we just start with the basics? Like, what manners do we teach children?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So what was the first one that we talked about?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I don't have kids, so I had to ask Lacey and Amber. I'm like, what do we teach children? I don't even know what to teach, what I would teach a child. But, I go back to, what I learned when I was a little kid. You got your pleases and your thank yous. Very basic. Very basic.
Yes. And so from a social media perspective, when we're thinking about pleases and thank yous, there's a few things that we're thinking about here. Every piece of content that you're ingesting on social media, you're ingesting for free, okay? So what we see a lot of the time is this sense of entitlement that consumers end up exhibiting. Okay, they're exhibiting this sense of entitlement online. Maybe they're, asking a question and expecting, a really thorough follow-up from the brand that perhaps the brand doesn't have the capacity to teach them and educate them in that way. Perhaps they can do some of that by Googling themselves. So have you two seen kind of this entitlement culture coming that is maybe a problem with people not knowing their social media pleases and thank yous?
I've seen this reply a lot. Here, let me Google that for you. It's like people just think that they can put it out there and somebody else is going to do the work for them. And, that might be a little different. But earlier today, there was, it's Visit Mount Rainier, and somebody said, where can I go play in the snow? Sometimes you can't always Google that. Those are hard to find places sometimes. And someone had wrote, Paradise is great, go do this at Mount Rainier. And somebody else is like, well, check before you go because it's closed. And she said it 3 or 4 times, it's closed. Last time I checked. And I'm like, on the opposite sense of that, why don't you check to make sure that you're right before you say that? Right? So I typed out, okay, I'll be helpful. And then I erased it. And then I was like, I tagged her and I was like, hey, it's actually open. Here's the link. I think it might be helpful if you checked that before you put something out there. And I was just like, oh, okay. And I erased that. And then I just decided to say it. But it is true. It's like people are lazy. They just expect everybody to do it for them. And it's crazy.
Yeah. And a lot of times when you get into very impassioned niche audiences, this happens in any niche item. My big hobby is snowboarding, and I'm sure there's forums online where you can get all the technical people online talking about snowboarding details. There's other things, any niche piece, right? And you get into these discussions, or maybe there's kind of just a news article and there's a discussion happening, and people get very just impassioned about it, but there's a lot of times where it's like, you know what, just relax. Maybe Google something. Sometimes I see people coming into conversations like demanding that other people like explain things to them. And it's like that's not how it works.
Isn't it? It's this fine line. Exactly. It's this fine line between engaging and putting responsibility on someone else, right? Because when you ask questions on people's posts, you almost want them to feel like even grateful that you even engaged at all, and like they should be so grateful and they should do that research and give you those answers because you didn't have to engage at all.
Right.
And that's where there's this interesting line.
There's a good rule there. Maybe if you're asking for someone's experience, their personal experience around a particular subject, then that's something that you should ask them. If you're asking for facts and you should probably go look for that yourself and make your own determinations too. And that's right, that's a slippery slope. If you just start asking other people for facts and information, you're going to get their facts and their reality, and it might not be right.
Yeah, I love that, Amber.
Such a good point. Okay, the next thing that is a really good just manners that we might teach our children is to look people in the eye when you're having a conversation. Okay, so what's interesting about this rule is there's kind of 2 parts to it. One is yourself, right? Representing yourself authentically. And the other side of it is remembering that the other person is a person, right? It's like your own self-respect and the other person's self-respect. I see you smiling over there, Amber. You have something?
No, not necessarily. I love the idea of looking someone in the eye when you're doing the exact opposite because you're behind screens. So it's just kind of a funny. that's kind of my smirk because, we need to remember that there are eyes on the other side of that. There is a human being on the other side of every comment, on the other side of every retaliation. And no matter what they are saying that evokes you to want to respond, we need to remember that if you disagree with them, I mean, obviously we're not talking about you're wonderful, because those things are always nice to hear. But if there's some a particular thing that you want to comment or engage about that might not be the same way that they think, we need to remember, like, pretend they're standing in front of you. Would you talk to them like that? And would they still be your friend if you did?
Yep.
Such a good point. And Adrienne, let's talk for a second about, representing yourself authentically.
Yeah, I mean, part of looking someone else in the eye is when you are looking someone else in the eye and having a conversation IRL. I mean, you are who you are, but on the internet, I mean, you can create avatars for anything. You can your username, your screen name can be whatever you want it to be. So and then it's kind of like that kind of goes into another conversation about like online personal branding, but and it's fine to have like fun profile pictures. Like, that's not what I'm not like trying to say that you can't have like, whatever you want in your profile picture, but it is something that you should think about. Like who are you representing online? Are you representing yourself? Are you misleading people? Are you, who are you putting out there? Because people are going to take that and make like assumptions about you. Also, people can, create different personas for themselves online. I mean, they do it all the time, to be horrible, to be awful. And there is power in honesty and saying, I am Adrienne, and every account I have online is Adrienne, and I identify myself, and you're talking to me, and I'm not gonna like pretend like I'm not. I am who I'm not. That is very important, and I think that that is part of good manners, right? Presenting yourself as who you are. I mean, think about every single like high school like movie ever. The protagonist always gets in trouble when they pretend to be somebody who they're not. So
and that is one thing that I think takes a little bit of power away from people who maybe are less kind and intentional online, who do hide behind something. One of our first steps, if we get a message from a troll or something, is to go look at their profile, right? Go look at their profile. Do they have a profile picture? Do they have an actual name up there? And that's part of looking somebody in the eye, right? Is like, oh, I see you just made a comment to me. Let's go look in your eyes for a second here, right? So yeah, I think that's a really important point. Okay, so another thing that is an important manner that we teach our children is to apologize when we are wrong. Okay, Amber, from your perspective, how does this play into social media etiquette?
I can't tell you how many times I've watched somebody going back and forth on a particular subject. Maybe it's a hot topic, and one person will be very clearly spoken and cite references, and the other person just doesn't want to let it up, even though they've maybe been proven wrong. And I think I think that there is value that even when you still maybe don't think that you're wrong, to just say, okay, I see where you're coming from. These are really great resources. Thank you for sharing. I might have been a little off on that. I'm going to go look. And just kind of walk away. Because at that point, when you're just going back and forth, and nobody wants to apologize, you're not getting anywhere. You're not changing anyone else's mind. You are providing entertainment for those of us who want to watch. So thanks for that, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it is important sometimes to swallow your pride, even if there are times that you just don't think you're wrong, because sometimes that's the only thing that's going to stop a conversation from progressing, and at a certain point it's not doing anyone any good.
Right. Yeah, I've watched conversations go, Amber, similar, like exactly what Amber's saying, where, you know, I haven't been in those arguments. I wonder, Amber, if you're watching me argue with people on the internet. Maybe.
Might be.
You know, I'll go back and forth with somebody, and there have been times when I've been wrong, or if I put myself in their shoes, I could see how they would say that I was wrong. Maybe they're not like wrong or right. Maybe I'm completely correct about what I'm saying, but I will really try to look at it from their perspective, and then I'll see like where they're coming from. And then what I'll say, hey, and I'll call them by their name, because oftentimes that's a part of like looking somebody in their eye and say, hey, John, thank you. And you call them by their name, treat them like a human, and say, you know, I see we're not going to agree on this. I apologize for this part that I was incorrect on, or maybe I wasn't clear on. And sometimes people being right or wrong, it's not even being about right or wrong. It's about clarity, and it's about like,
ooh, yeah,
you know, and so just treating somebody with respect and saying, hey, we're miscommunicating. I'm sorry that I wasn't clear. Let's just chill and relax and get off the internet. And then normally, what is somebody going to say to that? They're not, you know, if they're a reasonable person, they're going to be like, all right, cool.
Yeah, it'll stop there, and nobody feels angry when they go to bed at night stewing on it. It feels like there's some resolution. So be the bigger person, resolve it, be done, and move on. It is funny that you say, well, maybe I wasn't clear enough. Well, I think that is one of the biggest downfalls to social media, is that we end up engaging with people we've never met before. We can't hear their tone. We don't know the cadence in their voice. We don't know their personality. So somebody who has a really dry sense of humor might come across as a super big jerk, and really that they're being funny, and everyone who knows them thinks they're hysterical. So it's really hard to communicate, and we do need to be very careful. And I think it's important to be careful. I think we've reached a time where people just don't care what other people think of them anymore, to a point where they're just going to be angry and go off and set in their ways and not open. And I think that will, really, it'll kill us as a nation if we don't. And I'm not trying to be political there. It just is. We have to be better communicators.
And we're talking about it from an interpersonal standpoint right now, person to person, but there's also a brand perspective to look at this too, right? Coming to the table and apologizing, maybe even before you're called out on things. It even makes me think right now about, you know, the changes that we've been making internally over the past year in regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I almost feel, as we're talking about this, I almost feel like there should be like an apology discussion too, like, you know, actually coming to terms with the fact that we hadn't even really thought of this very much as a problem before it was put so much out into the public, and we had to make statements about it. There's just something very powerful about apologizing, sincerely recognizing the things that, even from a brand perspective, that you've done wrong. Holding yourself accountable, right? Amy who we've been talking about and who is now quite active in our Spry Space group, brought that to the table in regards to apologizing for this topic, is accountability versus shaming, right? There's a very easy way to make sure that you are holding yourself accountable, and you can also work towards holding other people accountable without any sort of shaming having to happen anyway, with the language that we choose in how we discuss our differences, right?
That is so huge. Mm-hmm. So I have avoided oftentimes sensitive subjects because I don't want to be shamed for it, for whatever I say, like for my ignorance. I don't want to be shamed for the fact that I'm like, yes, I grew up in this small little world and I don't understand these, and I want to ask questions to try to put myself in somebody else's shoes to help understand. I love everybody, and I always want to understand where everybody's coming from, and I ask questions. But online, there are particular types of people who get angry if you're even trying to approach certain subjects as an outsider. And that's hard.
Oh, yeah.
So helping somebody through something carefully when you can see that they are trying to better themselves and not shaming them, we really need to learn how to do that better.
Yeah. And holding people accountable. And part of that too is kind of what we were just talking about at the very beginning, and saying, hey, what you're saying right now might not be really what I experience. Here's a great link, or you can Google that before we talk about, or something like that. That is like kind and nice, and not being like, you're wrong. Oh my gosh, why would you say that? That there's a totally different thing, a different angle. The other thing about shaming that I wanted to mention, it happened just today, and it's wild, and I guess I'm surprised I haven't seen it yet, but brand shaming around what's happening in the world right now with COVID. I have an account where the employees have to travel extensively for their work, and we got a shout out on Twitter. Somebody took a photo of someone with a company jacket on at an airport, wearing a mask and following guidelines, but they said something to the effect that this person invaded my 6-foot space, my personal bubble, and they were rude, basically, and publicly shaming somebody, and then calling, and then at the brand, so like mentioning us as the brand. So, there's kind of like this knee-jerk reaction that people will have right now, because of course you want to be shown as taking a public health crisis seriously. And if we had done a knee-jerk reaction, we would have replied and said, oh my gosh, we're so sorry. We're going to, reprimand this person, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then if you think about it kind of, from a different perspective, there's no way to know that person actually even was an employee. We have no idea we can't even tell if maybe they got the shirt some other way. There's two sides to every story. And it was kind of like, there is that kind of that reaction where people, because they are hot button issues right now. And sometimes brands are like, oh my gosh, we have to respond to this because it's going to be so bad. But sometimes not even giving it any energy is the way to go. It's kind of like, if you think about it, when you're a kid in the playground and somebody's tattling on you or making up stories about you, the best thing to do is ignore them. That's what my mom taught me.
I love that, and I'm probably going to use that a lot from now on. Don't give it any energy.
Yes.
Don't let it pick up steam. Just let it lie. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one more thing that I want to say on this, though, when we're talking about, shame, I think another piece of that is acknowledgement. So when you are, rather than shaming, right, we want to acknowledge their feelings. So there's kind of like that sandwich we talk about. So acknowledge what they're saying, and that you're trying to understand that is probably the first sentence that should come out of your mouth when you are then trying to say something that will, hold them accountable, and instead of shaming them. I think that's a good approach.
I'll bring up one more thing. I feel like this could be our entire topic, but but it's good to orbit around it for a while, because it is probably one of the most pressing issues in regards to social media etiquette. So, Adrienne, you've probably seen a lot. We work with a department of the Lakota Sioux tribe. And so we've been following a lot of indigenous topics lately. And so we just had the Super Bowl this week, and the Chiefs were in the Super Bowl, right? And so there are some organizations that work pretty hard to get rid of Native mascots. And one thing that I really appreciated as I watched a lot of the content that was coming out from some of these groups is, in no way did they target individual people and say, these people are racist for doing this. The way that they communicated was very clear that the practices and behaviors were racist because of these reasons. Here's how it makes people feel. Here are the things that you can do to help forward this cause. It was informative, educational, professional, clear. It could have gone a totally different way, right? They could have chose much more shaming type ways of communicating that desire and that initiative. But I learned a lot just from watching the content that was put out by some of those organizations in the last few weeks. And I thought they took advantage of the chiefs being in the spotlight this way, in a way that was accountability, not shaming, from my perspective.
Yeah.
Good example.
Okay, so let's move to something kind of lighter for a moment. One manner that we try to teach our children is how to make small talk, okay? So some people hate small talk. Some people, they're like, I don't want to have to do small talk, but there's some power in small talk. Okay, there's a reason why when you're in a group of people that you don't know, you talk about the weather, like how, the weather lately, right? It's because it's something that everybody is experiencing at one time, okay? That's why we try to be very mindful as social media managers about what are trending topics, right? What's happening in the world that everyone is experiencing, so that why, Adrienne, I love the way you say this. What's the phrase you use when you're like talking about entering a room?
Oh, you got to read your room. You got to read the room. I mean, any good networker, anybody who, well, I'm an extrovert if anybody hasn't noticed, but anybody who is seeking to, well, you want to make new friends, or you going into a room by yourself, like a really great way to enter is just to come in quietly, kind of sit there and listen to what other people are talking about, and then gently start to see if there's any common ground. It could be as basic as, oh my gosh, we're both wearing the color black today. Do you love black? Is it your favorite color? And then Lacey will be like, oh my gosh, it's my favorite color. I already know it's your favorite color. But these like little chit chat, these little pieces where you find common ground, you can't do that if you just like rush into a room and then announce your presence and say, everybody buy my program on LinkedIn, and then okay, bye, and you leave. That's not how, everybody in that room will be like, what is that person doing?
I love the way you say find common ground. Like, I think that probably is the purpose of small talk. It's how do you find common ground? Because if you're going to have any sort of productive conversation, then there has to be these bridges built through some sort of common ground. I love that.
Yeah. People want to be seen, and they want to be recognized and validated, and they want to feel important. Right? So asking questions like, where did you grow up? I mean, just again, all that small talk. And that's in real life, but that's also on social media, maybe even more important on social media because you aren't in person. But if you can make someone feel that way, you're going to immediately, have more trust. You're going to be recognizable to them. So from a brand standpoint, if you take the time to make those small connections and be interested in the person, not only one is that good to understand your client and who they really are, they'll feel appreciated, and that is never a bad thing. I think that we need more of that in the world. And with that, there's an irony here that is not lost on me, because in real life, small talk is practically dead. And you want to know why? Because everybody's on their phone.
So we already... That's true. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So ignore the people in real life and make small talk on your device. It's terrible advice, by the way. But really, small talk, I think, is important. And it's good manners to not just suck and siphon from people, to actually give back to them and make them feel worthy and loved and important.
Beautiful.
I think about a lot of comments that I see in groups that I'm, lurking around in. I'm lurking around listening to I'm reading the room. I'm that's kind of what social media managers do all the time. We reread the room constantly, several different rooms at the same time. Because if your community is your room and you're kind of peeking your head in and be like, how are you guys doing? You know, what's going on here? Is everybody fighting? Is everybody happy? Guys got snacks? What's going on? Like, I mean, really, that's what we do all day. And sometimes you don't need you just kind of like peek your head in and you're like, all right, everything's safe and sound. But like, if you think about it, a lot of the times when people say like, oh my gosh, this group isn't valuable anymore, or this place is bringing me down, is when I see this all the time in groups, when people will come into the group, they're new group members, and they will like ask a question right off the bat, and it's a question that's been answered in depth like a week ago. And if you just use the search function easily, you'd be able to find that. Or if you see a post sometimes just anywhere, and then there's some good conversation, but you don't read the conversation, you just read the top, and then you come in at the bottom all hot and just say, like whatever it is you're going to say. And then people, someone says, we were talking about that up here and you didn't read it. You missed it. Yeah. And that, like what you're saying, Amber, is like, you're not listening. Like think about how much more powerful it is to take the time and read the conversations and then go in and say, hey, Janice, you are so correct. I love the way you said that. And then here's my thoughts, right? That's so much more powerful and kind and like proper manners than just like coming in with what you think, because then no one's gonna like listen to you, because you obviously didn't listen to everybody else. So you're just gonna be like ignored, and then everyone in your group is gonna be like, who's this person? And be bugged by it.
Listen to Adrian.
This is probably a marketing technique that people have seen kind of all over the place, but it goes hand in hand with small talk. But people will post in those groups something that's not even relevant, but to get people to talk about themselves. Like, what was your favorite band in high school? Or does anybody know this song, or anything like that? And you will get so many people engaging. And really what that does is it sets your algorithm that Facebook then thinks that people want to engage with you. So it's a little trick, but it is proof that people love small talk. They love to talk about themselves, and they want to feel a part of something. Small talk works.
I use it as a trick. As like an actual campaign in some of my brands that I manage. We'll do some informational content, and then I call some of those posts like simple and engaging posts. Like, if my audience is Pacific Northwestern people, I might put out a post that just says, have you been hiking lately? Where? And it's for a mortgage company. So, it really is just that little trick of like, okay, so let's talk about something you're interested in for a little while, and then I can present some information that I think is useful.
Yeah.
So that's a good
point. It's so smart, because that can work with that works with every single other industry, because people that want mortgages aren't talking about mortgages all the time. They're going to need mortgages at some point in their lives, but they're not going to be talking about it all the time. But how cool is it to like engage with a brand that happens to be a mortgage company, but also understands what it's like to live in the Northwest? That is so awesome. Like, it also, for me, it came to mind wineries. I used to work in the wine industry. We didn't talk about wine 24/7. We also talked about cheese and bread and yeah, all the other things that people who also love wine also love. And then you start to create this a relationship. It's not just like one thing all the time, because that gets boring.
I love it. All right, I'm going to move us on to the next section. Amber, you brought this to the table, which I just love. Any of you who have heard of or read the book, The Four Agreements, great book. I don't know if any of you know this, but I've like read all the books in that series. And maybe I also traveled to Mexico, where the author like studied and wrote and like went to all the pyramids and stuff that they studied at. So I'm like, I love this topic, and I'm glad you brought it up.
I just saw an infographic about it, so I'm not sure I'm the person who should be talking about this. The infographic that I saw was pretty awesome and resonated with me, and I was like, we just need to do this in real life with people, right? I didn't know. What is that book? And I think Julia Robertson made the movie where she travels to
Pray,
find
Love.
herself. Yes. That was your Eat, Pray, Love moment, to Mexico to search for the 4 agreements.
Yes. Okay, so Amber had to go to take care of some things with her family this evening. So, Adrienne, you cool to just finish this up with me?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so one of the things that Amber brought to the table that I wanted to talk in depth about here is the 4 agreements. So the 4 agreements comes from a book by Don Miguel Ruiz. And it's such a good outline for how to live your life. And also we can apply it to how to do social media. Maybe I went to Mexico and studied a bit under some of the author's sons and whatnot. So I love to talk about this topic. So number 1 is to be impeccable with your word. So Adrienne, what does that mean?
Be impeccable. That means whatever comes out of your mouth, you have to take responsibility for, right? So that means that you have to think about, before it comes out of your mouth, could it hurt somebody's feelings? Could it be bad for you? Are you casting yourself in a bad light? Are you telling a lie about somebody else? Are you gossiping about somebody else? It kind of ties into the similar rule that I kind of go by, is that, anything that you write down or say, if somebody puts it on the front page of the New York Times or whatever newspaper, are you going to stand behind those words? You have to be able to stand behind those words. So being impeccable, being impeccable with your word just means being very aware about what you're saying at all times.
And intentional. Mm-hmm. And I like what you said about standing behind what you say, being accountable for the words that you say. Very important. Okay, the second agreement on the list is one of my favorites. It's don't take anything personally. So this is something that has been very important to me in my life and also in my job, because I guess I didn't understand until I was nearly 30 that somebody else's opinion of me had much less to do with me than it had to do with what was happening inside of them. So that's the big takeaway from this rule, from my understanding, or this agreement, is anything that somebody else says has much more to do with them than it has to do with you. And so you don't have to take on the energy of what anybody else is saying, even if it's about you.
Yeah. And along with that, what others say and do is a projection of their own reality and their own projections of how life is, right? So oftentimes, and when I first started working for you, Lacey, we did a big personality test, and I remember watching a light bulb go off in your brain, oh, that's why Amber is the way she is. I say things just very black and white. It's factual, and it is what it is. I feel like I don't need a lot of fluff around stuff. I want to get to the bottom of things, and I don't have a lot of time to not sugarcoat, but that's just how I communicate. And so when we did those personality tests, and we were and then on the flip side of that, I'm like, oh, okay, Lacey is tenderhearted, and she wants to please others, and she wants people around her to be comfortable and happy. And so when she feels that I am being curt and short, it makes her feel like she's done something wrong, or that I'm not comfortable, or that my feelings are hurt and you want to fix it, when really I'm just trying to get to the bottom of it, right? So what others say and do is a projection of their reality, maybe their personality. It has nothing to do with you, and just take it for face value. Don't take it personally.
The third agreement that I really like also is don't make any assumptions, okay? There is a lot of power in asking questions. You know, that's the cure.
They say what assume is it makes an ass out of you and me. We couldn't not say that, right?
Yep.
So, from a brand perspective or from an interpersonal perspective, having the ability to just ask questions about what something means instead of drawing inferences. Certainly, as a social media manager, like Adrienne says, we like to read the room, we like to listen. However, there might be a nice clarifying step where we could ask a question like, hey, we've been seeing this. This is what we think about this. Is this true in your opinion? And that can be the difference between taking an insight that might be wrong and actually creating an understanding between you and your community, or between, any sort of interpersonal connection that you might have.
I love that. Yep.
The last of the 4 agreements is always do your best. So this one is interesting because it's very subjective what your best is, okay? Because nobody else can say what your best is. You're the only one that can determine that. And your best on Monday is going to be different than your best on Thursday, than the next Thursday, and so on. So what are your thoughts on this, Amber?
Right now, especially because you mentioned Monday, I want to be like, take me to church, sister. My best on Monday is never gonna be my best on Friday. Mm-hmm. It just seems like, and I have been really trying to take my weekends off for several months now, but what that does is it piles a lot of responsibility onto Monday, and that can be kind of tricky because then it trickles down through your week. But you need time to reset, right? So I don't know where the happy medium is. Personally, I don't know that I've found it, but I do always do my best. And I think that is for sure true, for that it fluctuates from day to day. And it just has to be enough. Actually, my life motto, I have a tattoo right here. Let it be enough. Do your best no matter what, and let it be enough. Just let it lie. Let it be still. I don't know any other way.
I kind of think of do your best as kind of being like being impeccable with your actions, not just with your words. Because you know what? Sometimes our best isn't, you can only do what you can do. Right? But as long as you know that even though it's not quite as fast enough, or maybe it's, whatever it is, you're still doing it like within your integrity. And that's really like doing your best to me, is just doing what you possibly can. And, honestly, if people who respect you and are good partners, and maybe it's not quite to whatever standards they have, but they're going to communicate with you, hopefully not make assumptions, and they're going to have the 4 agreements, and then you can work through it and do different work, or level it up, or change it, or pivot it, or whatever. But like, yeah, for me, like doing your best is just having integrity. For me, I was kind of thinking about, when we played soccer, I played soccer in high school. I remember, we had to do laps around the field. And my dad would always be like, don't ever cut corners. Don't ever cut corners. And I would never cut corners. And I would, of course, I'm also a slow runner. Let's be real. But there was people that would cut the corner and they would finish before me, right? But I always did my best. And even though I wasn't as fast as everyone else, I know that I did my best. I did not cut corners, and I did what was right. And that's kind of like what I think of with doing your best. So, anyway.
Sometimes I have a tendency to push myself past my best, which I think I have a goal of through my 30s. Okay, let me give myself some space for this. But through my 30s, I would like to be able to be better at checking in internally with my gut at where my best really ends, because when you do more than your best, then your best actually gets worse and worse and worse and worse over time.
You just burn yourself out.
Yeah. Yes. I think that goes right back to what your best is today might not be your best tomorrow, right? Because I do the same thing. I expect perfection from myself. I've watched my little girl struggle through that. And part of me is like, she does good work when she does things, but part of me, when she's so disappointed that she didn't meet this high expectation, And she's a competitive athlete. So I'm really trying to teach her that. Well, it's hard when you're not modeling that, right? But just doing your best and kind of do your best and let it rest. That's it. And it's a lot easier said than done, that's for sure.
So the last thing that I want to talk about in regards to social media etiquette is just the golden rule, okay? The golden rule, do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. So I have a couple of pet peeves that I would not like ever done unto me. And so I would like to bring them up as etiquette. And if either of you have some, you can bring them up too in our last few minutes. So one that drives me nuts is like, don't DM your sales pitches to me. I promise you, I will never direct message a sales pitch to you from any brand or any account that I ever touch. I won't do it. It's rude. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah. So awkward.
It's so awkward. It's horrible.
It's like being a door-to-door salesman. Imagine being a person just
that's
wandering,
exactly what it's like.
just wandering around, being like, "Oh, this house looks nice." Knocking on the door and being like, "Do you need a vacuum cleaner?" And this person is like the owner of a vacuum cleaner like empire. You have no idea, and then you look like a fool. Like, it's bananas.
My favorite is, I don't do it very often, but LinkedIn is the worst for this. You'll like, I have to really monitor who's asking to connect with me, and I'm like, okay, this person looks like they could be legit, and then 10 minutes later I get a DM with this, and I'm like, okay, so am I correct in understanding that you're trying to sell me XYZ? And they're like, yes, so could we set up a blah, 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 blah? I'm like, this is just horrible. I do try to kind of put the accountability back on them. Like, okay, so I'm understanding correctly that we just connected and you're trying to sell me something. Okay.
Yeah. Good strategy.
Yeah.
The other one that I heard about recently that I've seen too is, don't shame your followers into engaging with you. A lot of people, especially like micro businesses or photographers I've seen before, will put up this content that's like, the social media Instagram algorithm is making it so people can't see my content. So you need to like it, and you need to save it, and you need to share it. And why aren't you doing this? You're following me. It's too much.
No, don't do that. That's really awkward.
That's what advertising dollars are for. Like,
or a simple education post like, hey, if you love this content, go to these 3 little dots and click follow all.
Yeah, and be kind about it,
and be sweet about it, and let them make the decisions for themselves, which again goes right along with what you were just saying. And I don't know how far I want to get into this because I don't want to offend anyone who might be listening who's my friend. But I have a lot of friends, especially during COVID, who have started selling, multi-level marketing type of things. And I love them and I want to support them when I want to. I don't want to be berated about it. I don't want to be put on the spot about it. And if you and I have been friends for the opposite of LinkedIn, where you connect and try to sell, where I've been friends and connected with you for years and you never say anything and we don't have a relationship and then you try to sell. Yeah. That's just as tacky. It's just as tacky.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Don't do that.
Any other big pet peeves that you got to get off your chest?
Okay. Using the word hack. Being like, hack the algorithm. Hack this. Hack that. Hack. I'm a hacker. I can just magically hack things. And then they use that as like, okay, maybe the hack. Maybe using jargon to make you sound super I don't know what the word for it is, not just smart, but just make you sound like you are at a level beyond everyone else, and you just fill your content with jargon, and so people are kind of like intimidated by you. You just kind of present yourself as just this hot shot, and it's really not that true. Also, the word hack is like just all the jargon. I'm over jargon. I'm over the word disrupt. I'm over
something you do when you have a cold.
Hack, exactly. Right. It's like hacking. Hacking to me is like tricking the system. Like, is that sustainable for you? No, you're not going to be able to trick the system all the time, and it's going to come back and bite you in the butt, actually. And sometimes, like platforms, when they find out that you're hacking their system, they might kick you off forever. So it's
I've experienced that.
Yeah. So
back in the SEO days, I got a couple things banned when I was testing those waters of trying to hack, and that taught me real quick. You just do things legitimately. If you try to hack the system, you're gonna be blacklisted for it. So
exactly,
slow and steady wins the race.
I'm telling you that. And number 2 for me is bragging about yourself and not bringing others into the conversation. I just, there's this fine line of personal branding where you're establishing yourself as a influencer or just somebody who has really smart things to say. I think that there's a fine line between being helpful, being courteous, being personable, being, charismatic, whatever it is, but not constantly it being about you, because you didn't invent everything. You have all these other people that have helped you along the way. So like bringing other people into the conversation and saying, my friend so-and-so and I were talking about this topic the other day. What do you think? That's so much more inviting to everyone than just to have you shouting about yourself.
Than having you say, here's something that I do that works fabulously.
Good for you.
Don't talk about it, be about it. I'm just dropping all these one-liners.
I love it, girl.
I'm here for the one-liners. You want to know what my pet peeve is?
Yes.
Yeah.
When you blatantly see people engaging with posts to react instead of engaging with posts to learn or to listen. And that kind of brings us right back around to what we started with talking about. But that is a pet peeve of mine when people, and they just keep responding and you can tell that they're not even hearing the words on the other side of the conversation. And it's just like, why are you here?
It's reasonable.
You're not going anywhere. Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope that this is something that people will look at and resonate with and listen to and feel like it is relatable to them, because we're all experiencing this social media chaos together. And if we could all just learn some of these simple manners that we already know and just apply them properly on this platform, then we're going to have more constructive conversations. We're going to have, bigger, more engaged communities. Our brands are going to do better. Our relationships are going to do better. So here's to hoping for social media etiquette to just trickle down through the platform all through this year.
We hope that you will, from this point on, have manners on purpose.
That's right. So,
okay,
whenever
Lacey, we wrap this up, but before you try to turn it on us, I actually want to turn it around on you. Can we do that today?
Okay, I'm here for it.
Okay, so hey Lacey, there's a question that you ask us in closing every podcast so far in 2021, but we'd like to hear from you. Okay. How is your relationship with social media right now?
Okay, so let's talk about the positives and the negatives for me. The positives: we have been working with new brands, quite a few new brands lately, who have opened up totally new lines of education for me. So the people who I follow no longer look just like me. Okay. I would say if you would rewind a year ago, the people who I followed looked very much like me, acted like me, were in industries like me. 1 year later, I am learning about different cultures, different ideologies, different lifestyles, way more. I don't even recognize my feed compared to a year ago. So I'm very proud of that. However, on the downside, as I have moved into my own space and I don't have any other adults here living with me, in the evening, I would say that my social media activity is not nearly as healthy as it could be. I find myself scrolling and tapping and scrolling and tapping, and I can hear my own conscience saying, like, this is no longer good for you. You're getting nothing out of this. And my body posture like slowly slumps and slumps and slumps to the fact that I'm not even really there. I'm just consuming and I'm tired and I just don't stop, Now, at least, thankfully, I have kept in place the leave my room in another, or my phone in another room at night when I sleep, like over the whole past year. So I would say that's my only saving grace on this, is that at least I have kept that boundary so that when it's time for bed, I'm not scrolling in bed or tapping in bed. But, you know, there's probably a good 45 minutes or hour in the evening that has not been useful, and I can feel it sucking the energy. You know that feeling where you really can feel it sucking the energy out of you in an unhealthy way?
Oh, yeah.
So I'll work on that. I'm glad you asked about it because I haven't said it out loud, I don't think.
Yeah, sometimes saying it out loud, it's like the first step is recognizing it, right?
Hearing yourself say it.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you two.
Good therapy session, girls.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate you two so much and having this conversation. Is there anything else that either of you want to add before we wrap it up?
Who will let us be the internet police and make people be nice to each other? That's all I want to know.
I'll see what I can do.
goodness.
I'll put in some applications.
Thank it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you, those of you who are listening, for your time as well. We will post some more questions about this in our Facebook group, Spry Space. So you can find us and join the conversation there. There's an active post about social media managers in there right now, or I mean about social media manners. I'm sure there's stuff about managers as well, but social media manners specifically for this week.
Did you say managers?
Ooh.
Dun-dun-dun.
So you can find us there in Spry Space. You can find us at Think Spry on any of the other social channels. And we just hope that no matter what, you're trying to use your manners properly. And as always, we hope that you keep learning. Okay? We will talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone.